Well, hello and welcome into Barrels and Barrels, a bourbon and baseball podcast. Wes. Welcome into Barrels and Barrels, a bourbon and baseball podcast. I am Brandon. That is Wes. We're not with Michael tonight as we are live streaming during this Braves and Phillies game. Was I right? All right, where are you at right now? I told you.
I thought you were messing with me. I thought you were messing with me, and you hit the 30-second timer, and I was like, "That is so messed up. That is so messed up."
As he watched this, yes,
no
Wes is freaking out because the Braves, who officially were down 4-0, getting no hit by Zach Wheeler, have just come back to take the lead in the bottom of the eighth. Austin Riley, 2-run home run, 376-foot bomb to left field.
What a cliffhanger.
Yeah, how you feeling?
To the fans out there, by the way, Brandon left me on a cliffhanger. He said, "Oh, Austin Riley," and hit the 30-second countdown timer. And I was like, what? What happened?
And it mutes the mic, so he couldn't hear me.
Oh,
wow, what a big swing of the bat for the Braves. And that could theoretically turn this series around.
I mean, let's jump right in. In all honesty,
yeah.
If the Phillies win the Wheeler game, if the Phillies win here, the Braves are getting swept.
Yep.
Let's be honest. They're not winning game 3 in Philly against Nola. That's not happening.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, especially with how abysmal their offense had been in the first, the 15 innings of this series, right?
Yeah, man. I mean, we had, 4 hits?
Yeah, was it?
We got shut out game 1, which, game 1 we got shut out, and that was the first time the Braves had been shut out at home in 2 years.
Yeah, ridiculous. And they were trending that way in the first 6 innings of tonight.
Yeah, I mean,
until
look,
yeah,
you gotta give Wheeler credit, man. He absolutely dealt. This one ain't on him.
Yeah, no. Final line for Wheeler, 6 1/3. I think he struck out 10. 1 walk, 3 runs, 2 of them earned, 1 bomb, as he did give up the home run to d'Arnaud. But yeah, wow, what a wild turn of events here. I mean, they were up 4-0 through 5, 4-1 through 6, 4-3 through 7, and the Braves have scored 5 runs in the last 3 innings. And now lead in the bottom of the 8th by a score of 5-4. Well, that totally changes how this podcast is going to start out. If you're just joining us, welcome into Barrels and Barrels. I am Brandon. That is Wes. That way, on your camera screen.
Yeah, it's a new layout.
Yeah, new layout. Welcome in. We're not even going to run the open on this. So how are you feeling now as a Braves fan? After that swing of the bat, and tell me the emotions before that and after that.
I'll be honest. Before this inning, I'm playing this out in my mind, and I'm like, we have about 1 inning where we could possibly score some runs. If we don't score runs in the 8th, we're going into the 9th. We got 3 outs to play with. They got a couple guys they can throw at us, whether it's Orion Kirkring, who's been immaculate even as a rookie. Kimbrel, Alvarado just pitched. They still got Sir Anthony Dominguez, and they got some arms in the back end of their bullpen that have been really good. I'll be honest. My assumption is if we didn't score runs in that inning right there, we were getting swept.
Yeah, you were coming up with 9-1-2, I believe, to start that inning. And
yeah.
It all really started with a hit by pitch for Ronald Acuna, and then Ozzie gets him over with a fisted ground ball. Yeah, an excuse me swing. And then Ronnie steals third base on a ball in the dirt. And then Riley on a 3-2 pitch off of Hoffman puts it into the seats in left field to give the Braves the 5-4 lead. Wow.
Sorry to interrupt. I was emotionally ready to come on here and hop on a soapbox and talk about the 5-day rest and starting slow in a slump. And we had 9 days last year. We had 5 days. This is MLB has to figure it out. I guess all that's solved now. So,
well, we still got 3 outs to go, and that Braves bullpen has still been questionable. Yeah. So I wouldn't say count the chickens yet, right? But in play outs, so the inning is over, and as we're heading to the top of the ninth, I'm assuming it's going to be Iglesias.
Yeah, it should
Yeah.
be.
So
Yeah,
we're
Mitchell
gonna
through the Mitchell through the top of the eighth. So
okay. So here, as we're starting out, before we get any further, I do want to say that this is brought to you by Whiskey Towers. So head on over to whiskeytowers.com. Get 10% off your order by using the code Whiskey Weather. Again, all caps, Whiskey Weather, as whiskeytowers.com. A whiskey tower is what it sounds like. It's like a beer tap for your whiskey. So if you're a fan of whiskey, we are a bourbon and baseball podcast. Head on over to whiskeytowers.com. We're getting closer to Christmas. That's a great gift for any whiskey lover. So use the code Whiskey Weather, all caps, for 10% off your order. This is Barrels and Barrels, a bourbon and baseball podcast. We're talking the playoffs here. Obviously, we are in the DS series. Before we dive too much further into the DS series, let's recap what happened in the first few series. And before we get there, I ask you to hit the subscribe button if you haven't done that already. Hit the subscribe button below. Hit the like button. Tell us who your favorite team is, who you're rooting for out there as we are in the Major League Baseball postseason. Only 8 teams remaining, and a couple of them were on their last leg, one of them being the Baltimore Orioles. But who is your favorite team? Who are you rooting for? Who do you think's actually going to end up winning the World Series? We'd love to hear that in the comment section below. So don't forget to do that. And again, hit that subscribe button. So let's talk about the wild card weekend recap. Oof. We were 2 for 2 so far in our bold predictions, that's for sure. Michael Burns went with all series were going to be a sweep, and for the second time in history, in MLB playoff history, the first round of the playoffs went the minimum amount of games. So there's one. The Minnesota Twins was my bold prediction that they were not only going to win one game, but that they were going to win a series, and they did that. So let's start series by series. The first series was one right in your backyard. Tampa Bay hosting Texas. Tampa Bay got run out of their own building because there was no one there. But Texas Rangers take that 2-0, winning game 1 4-0, game 2 7-1. Was this the fact that the Texas Rangers are that much better, or Tampa just didn't show up?
I think it's a culmination of things. First and foremost, the Rays were injured. Like you got to kind of put that out there. Juan Franco has, he had his issues. The Rays were starting guys like Taylor Walls at shortstop. Nothing bad about Taylor Walls, but he's not Juan Franco. Brandon Lau got hurt. Luke Raley got hurt. They have an entire starting staff on the IL. And a couple guys in their back in their bullpen got hurt, and you kind of felt like if the Rays didn't win the Glasnow game, it really didn't matter. Like I didn't know how they were gonna make it out of that series unless they just absolutely mashed. And it just felt like they were too injured, and they didn't have anything in the tank that gave you hope that they were going to be able to come back. You got to give credit to Texas. I mean, their offense is awesome. They came out and they shelled Glasnow. I think Eflin pitched pretty well, but Texas just scored runs, man. What Evan Carter did was pretty amazing. The kid's 20 years old. He's really showing what he could do. Josh Young came back from injury, hit a home run. I mean, you got to give credit where credit's due with the Rangers. They're just a really good team. I think the only question mark for them really is the back end of their bullpen. That might matter more in a 7-game series,
right?
But in a 3-game series, I don't think it matters as much. So hey, it is what it is. The last thing I will say about it is you saw the photos. We've talked about it, man. The Rays have to figure something out. Like the attendance was just embarrassing, and the bad part is I looked at tickets, and it was $25 for upper level tickets, and as the graphic says, 19,704 fans.
The lowest attendance at a playoff game since the 1919 World Series. For those bad at math, that's 104 years ago. That's how abysmal it was.
I don't know.
So
It's just
what do you think it was? As someone who lives there, as someone who's immersed within the Tampa scene, is it
yeah.
just that it? I saw a lot of people saying the excuse was it's a 3 o'clock game on a Tuesday.
That that's one piece of it. It is, I would say, three major pieces that I feel like. Number one is the majority of Tampa Bay Rays fans, the majority of sports fans in the Tampa Bay St. Pete area. And if you don't know, and this is the first time you're listening to it, and you've never looked at Tampa Bay, Tampa, the city of Tampa, is separated by St. Pete by a major bay, right? You have to go, there are three bridges that go from Tampa to St. Pete, and they're 2 lanes. Well, one of them's 3 lanes, but it's not easy to get from Tampa to St. Pete, right? It's not, it takes you 15 minutes to get across the bridge. That's how big the bay is. So that's one thing. It's a pain to get from Tampa. Oh, I love it.
There you
Yeah,
go.
check out the graphic, right? So you got the Gandy Bridge down at the very bottom bridge there. You got the Howard Franklin Bridge, which is the middle bridge, and then you have the I forget the name of the third one up top, the Courtney
Courtney
Campbell
Campbell.
up top. Which, if you're using the Courtney Campbell, it's a 45-minute, hour-long trip from there down to the Trop, and look, it's just not easy to get to games. Okay, like
Hmm.
that's the reality of it. The game time didn't help because 3 p.m. If you're traveling from Tampa to St. Pete to get a 3 p.m. game time, I mean, you're leaving at 12:30 in
Hmm.
Tampa, right? On top of that, you're not pulling any fans from Brandon or Riverview, which is east of Tampa. You can see it there on the map. Like, you're
Yeah.
not pulling fans from over there because that's almost a 2-hour trip for them. So the second piece I'll say is the Trop is just not in good condition. We've talked about that. The third thing I will say is I love my people in St. Pete, love them,
Hmm.
but they're just not the sports going
Yeah.
people. A lot of them are retired. A lot of people in St. Pete are, they like to enjoy the left-handed cigarettes. Okay, I mean, and I love my St. Pete people. All right, I do, but they're just not the go to a playoff game for the Rays
Yeah.
type demographic of people, right? Like, so that's just the tough part about it, right?
Yeah.
And
My,
I hate to say it, but it's just tough, right? It's embarrassing because it's a playoff game.
and that's the thing. It's a playoff game, and it's not like that they haven't had playoff games as of late, right? Like they've filled that
Yeah,
ballpark when they've played in the past. My question is, how is Minnesota doing it in packing the stadium with a 30-minute later game? That's the question, right? You can't use the afternoon game as an issue. And then another one is the Chicago White Sox. We can agree that they are both uh, bad drawing teams, the White Sox and the Rays. The White
yeah,
Sox not generally pulling fans. They had a game in 2021 versus the Houston Astros where they faced the Astros in game 4 of that series in the ALDS at a 1 o'clock game on a Tuesday. And they sold the place out with 41,000 people too. So I
yeah.
don't think the start time can be really a huge excuse with this. But I understand it. A Tuesday, school's in, but if you're a fan, you're gonna
That's
make it happen. I
that's an
traveled five
excuse.
hours for a game to Chicago from
Yeah,
Cincinnati.
and to that point, in Tampa, when I worked for the Lightning and we had the Lightning in the first round at home. All right,
Hmm.
I'm going to give you a comparison. The Lightning, the Amalie Arena holds 18,162, I think. We sold it out for
Yeah,
a first round playoff game for the Lightning. You tell me 19,000 in stadium, third less than St. Pete, like
yeah,
gets 19? Ah,
yeah, yeah. I totally agree. But another uncharacteristic part of that team was the Rays 4 errors in game 1. Just
ugh, ugly.
yeah, they hadn't committed 4 errors in a game all year. They'd only done it 3 times in a game. I think 3 times all season. Just just not what that team was. And I think they
Right.
got to the end. They won 99 games, but they kind of, in my mind, maybe ran out of gas.
Yeah, I would
Yeah.
agree. And yeah, the errors are pretty uncharacteristic of them. Um, Yandy Diaz is was pretty good over there at first base. He made a
Yeah.
couple errors. I think it was Taylor Walls that made a few errors at shortstop. Just tough, man. It was not fun to watch, to be
No.
quite honest. Just as a baseball fan, even though
Right.
I do live here, I want to see the Rays succeed, but like just as a general baseball fan, it wasn't pretty. So
Yeah. A game. We're watching the Braves and the Phillies as we are watching this live. I'm watching game day, which is about 20 seconds ahead of the game on my phone, and then that's 20 seconds ahead of Wes's game. So I know what just happened on pitch number 5.
don't do this to me.
Do you want me to ruin it?
No. Just give me 20 seconds to watch here. Oh man.
Well,
God,
it's about to here. We'll watch it together on my phone.
oh,
I don't know if I can do this. Oh no! Oh no!
oh no.
Too many notifications. I'm not even gonna get to see it. Oh man, I know what happened because of game day, but you're gonna be celebrating. Oh my goodness, that's insane.
Oh, that's hit well. Oh, Harris.
Keep watching. Keep watching. Keep watching.
Oh, Harper. Harper, what are you doing? Oh my God.
Got to change the graphic.
Oh my God.
So the Braves win.
That's a deflating loss for the Phillies.
Yeah, that could be I'm not going to say it's a series ender for the Phillies, but boy, I think that puts the Braves right back in the driver's seat. Wow, what an ending. So Castellanos double. I missed the first part of the play. I saw the relay throw in, and then I saw Harper.
Harris was in right center, made an incredible catch up against the wall. Didn't quite rob the home run, but he made an incredible play right center. And Harper absolutely thought it was going to be down, and he was going to try and score from first to tie the game. And Harris just made an incredible play, and Harper couldn't get back to first.
Wow. Yeah, that's insane. You can't really get on Harper, right? Because he's trying to score to tie that game. And it's going to take an amazing catch to, wow. Austin Riley, for those of you who didn't see it. Okay, now here's the replay. Oh, yes, a leaping grab at the fence. He crashes into the fence. I think Harper had rounded second base at that point as well.
Yeah.
So he had to go back and tag the second base and then run back to first base. And he got doubled off to end the game. I'm not going to... that's tough. Oh, he was at shortstop and he slipped. He slipped.
He was short. And the throw goes through the cut man.
Yeah.
And Austin Riley is the guy that picks it up and throws him out at first.
Oh, man, what a inning and a half for Austin Riley. Wow.
Yeah.
And if he doesn't stumble, he might beat that back. Wow. Well, if you're just joining in, the Atlanta Braves have just tied up the series here in the NLDS as they looked like they were in trouble coming into the 7th inning tonight, down 4-1. They come back to win 5-4. Iglesias gets the save. I'm kind of going to get rid of that save and just give it to Michael Harris. I think you're not a pitcher, but I think you deserve the save over. Wow. Incredible ending to that game. An incredible final 3 innings. That's playoff baseball right there, man. That is playoff baseball.
That's what you watch for. God.
Yeah, and as we jump in, it is the top of the first in L.A., and the Diamondbacks already up 1-0 in this inning with runners on second and third, 1 out. Ground ball, that's going to score a run, and the Diamondbacks are up 2-0 at this point. So the Diamondbacks have a 2-0 lead in the bottom or top of the first. They lead that series 1-0 at this point in time. There's a whole lot going on. I was going to ask you later on in the podcast, but let's jump right into it right now.
Let's get into it.
What do you think about the bye? What do you think that winning a division and getting the bye is now a curse rather than a help, and rather than the thing that you want?
I will say this: Baseball is one of the only sports, and hockey might be the only other sport I can compare it to, where momentum, timing is more important a lot of times than a 5, 6, 7 day rest,
Hmm.
right? Man, I've seen it so many times where the team that gets 5, 6, 7, the Braves had 9 days rest last year before they played a game. They season ended in October 2nd. They didn't play again until October 11th.
Hmm.
Baseball is too much of a momentum game for a hitter that relies on rhythm and timing. Yeah, I
Yeah.
do think that it has too much of an effect. And I get the other side of a coin, the arguments. I get the arguments. All right, you get to rest your guys.
Hmm.
My counter argument to that is you only get to rest the minor injuries, right?
Right.
You got a guy that's got like a pulled hamstring and things like that, or his shoulders bothering him, right? A pitcher shoulder, like those type things aren't solved in 5 days, right? The home
Right.
field advantage aspect, I do think that matters, but only when you have momentum, right? If you haven't played in 5 days, you could see it from the Braves' first 6 innings. Dude, they were
Hmm.
getting blown up by 96, 97, and their timing was off. You could absolutely see it that they had not faced live pitching. And anyone who's played baseball or watches baseball on a regular basis, as you do, as Michael does, you can just see like Zach Wheeler only used a couple sliders in the first inning because he saw they were not going to hit his fastball,
Right.
right? Um, so to answer that question, I would say I think it is a disadvantage at this point to win your league. And I will say I think that teams may or may not. I'm gonna go out a limb and say that if a team is on the edge in future rounds, future
Hmm.
seasons, they might rest their guys anyways because it's more advantageous to be a 6 seed than it is to be a 1 or 2 seed and get a 7, 8 day bye. I
Right.
would rather and I would rather be the 6 seed, play 2 games, and start Spencer Strider against the Marlins and Max Fried against the Marlins than I would rest 5 days, 6 days, however long it's been since the Braves played, and
Hmm.
then see Zach Wheeler in game 2. So the last counter argument I will say is that people say you get to set up your pitching, right?
Hmm.
Well, that's true for game 1, but with the NL having an extra day, which by the way,
Right.
MLB, what are we doing?
Right.
Why are we starting the AL? Why are we starting all 4 games on the same day and then giving the NL an extra day off?
That was one of the
And the
things
Braves
on
are
the
still playing at
list.
home. And wait, I know why. All right, let's
Yeah.
be honest. I know why.
NFL.
Because of TV. It's because of the
NFL.
NFL. It's
Yeah.
because to get the TV slots, you have to break it up. I get it. I guess that's my soapbox, man. I feel like it's a disadvantage to win your league, to be the 1 or 2 seed. Like, had the Braves not come back right there, what would have happened? Sorry, I wrote it down. If the Braves would have lost, and let's assume the Dodgers lose this game,
Hmm.
the
And they're
last 2
about to
years,
because they're down 3-0 now here in the bottom of or top of the first.
the wild card team would be 15-8 or 15-8 or 16-7 in the division series. So to me, that says it's more advantageous to play 3 games or 2 games and then go in the division series, even if you don't get to rest a guy, even if you don't get to home field advantage, even if you don't get to set your pitching lineup, because guess what? The Phillies got to set their lineup almost exactly how they would have set it up anyways. So
Hmm. Yeah, I was
that's my
looking at it.
soapbox. I'm off now.
I was looking at it last year. 2022 was the first year, and we've got 3 people streaming us live right now. So thanks for watching, everybody. If you have any comments, put those in. We'll try to get those on and try to answer your questions if you've got any questions, and if you just got comments or who are you rooting for? What's your team? Who do you think is going to win the World Series? Throw that in as well. Last year was the first year with this new setup, right? Well, in 2020 there was similar, but it wasn't an official. That was just for COVID. So let's start with last year as the first one. Austin Riley and Travis Starno. There's our guy, Joe Campbell. Huge World Series fan. Huge Braves fan. 2021 World Series dynamic duo strikes again. The Braves have the game 3. That is. What is game 3? What are you talking about, game 3? I don't know what his comment was there. So going back. So 2022. In the AL and NLDS, the teams were 5-3 that had the home field advantage in the first 2 games. And I'm only counting the first 2 games of the series because by that point, and Justin, he's also a Braves fan. And here we go. He's lighting it up. So thanks for joining in, gentlemen. Game 3 of the 2021 World Series. That's what he meant. Okay. As far as what happened last year, teams 1-1, the Braves versus the Phillies. The Phillies ultimately went on to win that series. Dodgers split with the Padres, and the Padres ended up winning that series. But in the AL, New York and Houston were both the 1 and the 2 seed, and they they took the series there. So it's 2-2. It's kind of even. This year, so far, Baltimore's down 0-2. LA's likely to go down 0-2 after what we're seeing here, but we just saw the Braves come back. And then the Braves are 1-1, Houston's 1-1. So it's almost a 50-50 split through the first 2 games. So we took the division in their house. Justin's already get him a gold glove as he's talking about Michael Harris. So I kind of get your argument. I do think that I would still rather have the rest and be able to set the rotation because you're still setting games 1, 2, and 3, right? Because you're going to be able to put your rotation in whatever route. It just so happened that Wheeler got to pitch on normal rest tonight rather than 1 day less rest. So you're in the driver's seat now. Philly does have home field advantage, but all you have to do is win 1 out of the 2 in Philly. That place is still going to be rocking. It's going to be Justin is, ooh wee. How much you had to drink tonight, Justin?
It was the ring finger, though. It was the ring finger.
It was. Nicky Castellanos. I will say, as a Cubs fan who had Nick Castellanos on their team for 3 months, there is no guy that I wanted the Cubs to re-sign more back at the end of 2019 than it was Nick Castellanos because of the way he plays the game, and he almost tied the game up tonight if it wasn't for an amazing catch by Michael Harris. So far, I can say that I think we're both on agreement that right now home field advantage and having the bye isn't the best news, but still, I don't think it's the worst in my mind. Last year, the 2 AL teams used it to their advantage.
Depends on the team.
Right.
And what I mean by that, now, the Braves had some guys like Fried that, it's a big piece, right? Like that extra 5 days rest where he could go out today is a huge, huge advantage. Now, granted, he was not sharp today. He was biting edges. He didn't really get some calls that, there were a lot of pitches right there that he just didn't get. Wheeler was really, really sharp, man. He looked really good. On the flip side of that, you look at a team like Houston, and, to be honest, it might just be the fact that someone like a Dusty Baker is so experienced. They didn't come out flat last year. Same argument. They won their division. They didn't come out flat last year. They swept Seattle. They came out this year, and, they won game 1. Now, Framber didn't pitch great yesterday. Minnesota came out. Correa had a big game. So I don't know. I'm interested to see how that comes back. But even though Houston lost, you can't say they came out flat the same way that the Braves did, the same way that the Dodgers did both last year and this year, the same way that what's the last series? Baltimore has so far. And Baltimore scored some runs, but man, Texas is just slugs. So
I want to talk about all these series because we're here in the playoffs. Pablo Lopez, as Joe Campbell mentioned. Pablo, what, 7 innings, 7 strikeouts, a
what a
shutout
great
baseball.
outing by
Yeah.
Pablo.
2 great outings. He had a
Great
stud
outing. Yeah.
game in the game one of the AL wildcard series versus Toronto. Carlos Correa, 5 for 8 so far in this series. He's batting 533 in the playoffs. Jordan has had a great first 2 games, 3 for 7 with 3 home runs. Yeah, Framber went 4 1/3 with 5 earned runs, but JV went 6 innings of shutout baseball in game one. We were talking about Minnesota and Houston. They're tied up 1-1. They're heading to Minnesota. It's going to be Javier versus Gray in game 3, which will go off tomorrow in Minnesota, which that place was very packed out
Mm.
there for the wild card series. Oh, wow. What a hustle play by Freddie. I love the way Freddie plays. And that's a guy that you need to get going too. Both him and Mookie were hitless in game one, and that's part of the reason the Dodgers. I mean, he gave up 11 runs in the game. You're not going to win much
I
of those.
look,
But
it's tough, man. When the Dodgers had the same amount of rest that the Braves had, and you got your horse on the mound in Kershaw, which
hmm
let's be honest, he's just not had postseason success.
no,
I don't know what it is about some guys like Kershaw where
long tight maybe.
they are maybe, man. I don't know if it's a mental thing, a mental preparation thing, but man, it looked like they were sitting on his curveball and they were mashing it,
Yeah,
and he just doesn't have success in the playoff, and it's a little disheartening because you have to root for a Kershaw, right?
he's
Like
easy
you
guy to
want
root
to see
for.
him,
Yeah,
yeah, you want to see him succeed, but man, 6 earned runs in a third, uh,
yeah.
it legitimately doesn't get any worse than that.
No,
So
162 ERA, literally 162.0 ERA.
that's tough.
Playoff Kershaw. Definitely. And thanks for those of you who are watching, Joseph Campbell, Justin Ferris, who are chiming in on the comments. Anybody else joining in, don't forget to hit that subscribe button below if you haven't done that already here on YouTube. You can also find us Spotify, Apple, as well as iHeart, Amazon, and Google Radio podcasts. So the Dodgers are down 3-0 in the bottom of the first right now. They could potentially be looking at an 0-2 hole heading to Arizona. The Phillies are tied now with the Braves after an amazing comeback. The story of the Braves season was their offense, and through the first 15 innings of this series, there was none. 5 hits in the game
Mhm.
one. They were no hit going into the 6th inning before they scored their first run. Um, was this last 3 innings enough of a spark, you think, going
Yeah,
forward? Yeah, I
yeah.
think it is too.
I think baseball is that kind of game where, and it's not always the Travis d'Arnaud 2-run homer that you get. Sometimes it's just a little blue pit that kind of
Right.
gets things going. But for this team and this offense, yeah, I think that was it. The 2-run homer by d'Arnaud just kind of sparked it, man. And that hit by pitch was huge. Um, so good on them. A great at
Yeah.
bat by Austin Riley there. So
Now, my reverse question would be reverse these 2 games. This happened in game one, and game one actually happened in game two. What's your thoughts going to Philly? Would you feel less confident, just the same, or do you still think you've got?
you're saying if we got shut out in game two, but we came back in game one.
Yeah.
Um, I think I would probably still be pretty confident.
Okay.
I feel like I would have more confidence going into game two versus Wheeler if that would have happened. But the fact that it happened this way and we did it against Wheeler and not against Ranger Suarez, that gives me confidence that we can go into Philly, we can score runs on Nola.
hmm
Now, granted, Wheeler, man, God, outside of that 2-run home run, like, dude, he was dealing. Like,
Yeah.
if you guys didn't watch the first 4 innings, the
Was it
Braves could
eight
not hit
strikeouts?
sand if they fell off a camel. Okay, like It
Yeah.
was not good. We looked lost at the plate.
Question here from Joseph Campbell. Serious question. Not to dwell on the layoff, but isn't it generally fair to say that hitting takes longer to return to form after a lull than pitching? Yes, for the most part. I do think we're at the back end of the season where I do think it's probably not as big of a difference as it would be for the beginning of the season or even after the All-Star break. But it was a large layoff. It was 5 days. You played on Saturday. You played on Sunday. And to be honest, did the Braves really play on Sunday? I don't think that they played all their starters on Sunday.
Mm.
They didn't play everybody down the stretch either. That's another thing. Like, do you push it a little harder towards the last couple of days of the season if you know you're going to get this 5 days of rest? Or it's kind of like this.
Yeah, I mean, we could probably talk strategy, right? And here's what I don't want to see. What I don't want to see is MLB get in the position where teams do realize it's an advantage to not be the 1 or 2 seed
Right.
and start resting their guys the entirety of September because the Atlanta Braves have a 15-game league in the East.
Yeah.
You know, like that's what I don't want to see. But to answer your question on the other side of that is I think best suited, yeah, you start resting your guys week 2 of September,
Mm-hmm.
and then you start pushing it pretty hard week 3, week 4. Maybe you rest them week 1 and 2, and then you start pushing it through. I mean, knowing what we know now, right? Like hindsight's always 2020. I think I would structure it that way where I'm gonna rest those guys. I'll bring up the minor league guys. I'll call some people
Mm-hmm.
up. They'll get their playing time in September, the first 2 weeks, and then week 3, week 4, we're treating it like playoffs.
Yeah. Yeah, look at the Phillies. Look at the Diamondbacks, who were playing for playoff spots for the last couple of weeks of the season. Even look at Minnesota. Now, Minnesota did have a great month of September, and that's carrying over here into the month. But even Houston, they won Game 1 after sneaking into the playoffs. On the final day, they stole the division. So it's not like that they had been resting their guys going into the final few days. And maybe that's the difference there, right? Like, Baltimore, they were still pushing for that first overall seed because they could have been that wild card because Tampa only finished 2 games behind them. The only team that won really with a comfortable lead, well, I guess you could say the Dodgers did too. The Dodgers had what, a 12-game lead or a 10-game lead
Yeah.
or whatever it was over AZ, but maybe that's just it. Like they didn't have the push the final few weeks, so that competitive juice. I don't think it's that easy to turn on the competitive juice. As someone who played in college sports and high school sports as a very competitive level, you can't just turn it on and turn it off. The last
Yeah.
couple of weeks, you kind of coasted. And it's not like you could just flip the switch right there. Maybe that's what the Braves needed was tonight. That was the flip of the switch there in the 7th inning or the 8th inning with d'Arnaud's home run. Or no, it was the 7th inning with d'Arnaud's home run and then 8th with Riley. Maybe that's what it took, is just that to get back going. Houston didn't need to flip it on. Texas didn't. Baltimore does. But they've still pushed. And I wouldn't say Baltimore's come out flat. They both have the same amount of hits in that series.
Yeah, they've
19
scored
hits.
runs, Like
3 to
Baltimore
2
scored
and
runs.
3 to 2 and 11 to 8. I mean, the Baltimore starting pitching is probably what did we say 3 or 4 weeks ago?
Yeah, we did, right? And I think we said Bradish has been the best pitcher in baseball the second half, and Grayson Rodriguez has been the third best pitcher, statistically in the second half. But it's just the playoff experience, right?
Yeah.
Like they had the least amount of experience of anybody in the playoffs
Yep.
that wasn't named the Diamondbacks, right? And even Zach Gallen, like those guys. Look, man, I feel for the Baltimore Orioles. Watching Camden Yards go crazy was awesome.
Yeah.
I honestly pray that they get back to Baltimore
For Game 5.
It's a Game 5 in Camden Yards. Dude, there's no amount of money. Like I wish.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, for what it's worth, Bradish, I don't think pitched awful. Only 2 earned runs in 4 2/3. Now that may seem bad. He had 9 strikeouts through those 4 2/3 of an inning, so he was getting outs. He just a lot of pitches. I think he was in the 90s by the end of the fifth inning there. And it's not like Jordan Montgomery shut down the O's either. He had 4 earned runs and 4 innings pitched. Just got a great game out of Cody Bradford, 3 2/3 of an inning of shutout baseball in relief there. I still, I I do think I mean, obviously Texas is up 2-0 and they're heading home, right? So they're in the driver's seat, but I don't think we can put the Orioles to bed yet, just because it's not like they've gotten destroyed in both games. They were close in game one. They did have, 3 runs in the ninth inning to make it 11-8 on Sunday. But
Yeah, I think Texas kind of controlled that game a little more than the final score says. They did hit a 3-run homer, like you mentioned, but Texas scored their runs early and often, and Baltimore did kind of put some stuff, put some threats there together late.
Yeah,
but I don't know. I mean, I think the thing is with those two offenses. I mean, I think Texas was the number 2 offense behind the Braves, and then the Orioles were number 3 or number 4. Like, you
Tampa
never
was number
know.
3, I believe. But yeah,
Yeah,
the Orioles offense was top 5.
you just never know, right? Like,
Right.
The Orioles could get hot and they could score 10 runs the next 3 games.
Yep. And here's a big one. Joe mentioned it. I have it written down. Walks. 11 walks in game 2 issued by Baltimore pitching, because Texas only had 11 hits. I say only had 11 hits. They scored 11 runs. You would expect them to have a little more than 11, 11, and 11. 11 runs, 11 hits, 11 walks. Whereas Baltimore actually had more hits in that game, 14 hits. But they only had 5 in game 1. They both have the same amount of hits. That's a great offensive series. Game 3, starters, Kramer versus Eovaldi. Evo wasn't that great, I don't think. Was he? In game 2, he did pitch game 2 versus Tampa, didn't he?
Yeah, I think he did. Let's go look at the box score.
They won that one, 7-1?
Yeah, he beat Eflin. He had a 1.35 ERA, so maybe he did. He went 6 2/3, 6 hits, 1 earned run, 8 Ks.
Right.
Yeah, he actually pitched really well. I didn't get to watch that game, unfortunately.
Me neither. I know he had struggled down the stretch. He had been hurt, and he hadn't been as dominant as he was through the first 2 or 3 months of the season. That should be a good game. That'll be tomorrow, Tuesday, as this podcast drops on podcasters for Spotify. You'll be listening to that game later on tonight. In game 3, as I mentioned earlier, Minnesota versus Houston. Real quick, with that Minnesota series, amazing stuff there. What I loved was the fact that they got off the schneid, broke that 18-game playoff losing streak, and that dated back to October of 2004. That place was insane. Minnesota baseball, awesome. That is what playoff baseball is all about. Insane, just atmosphere of the ballpark, sitting on the edge of your seats. Royce Lewis comes out, first career playoff at-bat, yard. Second career playoff at-bat, see ya. And then Duran comes in just throwing gas.
102.
That's a sneaky bullpen. And you and I both agreed on this in the last week's episode. I think Minnesota can still take this from Houston. They've got the home field advantage now. Starting pitching, I think, lines up a little bit better for them than it may for Houston.
I'll be honest. I agree with you, right? And it will all depend on which Christian Javier the Houston Astros get, right? If the Astros get the Christian Javier that spent like 8 weeks on my fantasy team, it's going to be a good day for Minnesota, okay? But Sonny Gray has been really good. He's been really consistent. Last year, 2 years ago, like he was getting up a lot of home runs. He's been really good this year. He was really good in his first playoff start. So I feel like he's going to give them a chance to win. I don't see Sonny Gray giving up 6, 7, 8 runs. Look, that in today's offensive environment, it certainly could happen. But I feel like he's going to keep them in the game. He's going to he's not going to strike out that many people. He might get in some trouble every now and then, but he's going to get a ground ball double play to get him out of something. It's like I think it depends on Christian Javier. And can he pitch well? Can he get the strikeouts that we saw? Can we get the guy that we saw in the 2022 playoffs?
Right.
Because that guy was unhittable. And legitimately, he was part of a combined no-hitter. So
Yeah.
it just that if Minnesota takes game 3, man, I really like Minnesota's chances.
Yeah. We haven't even seen Ryan pitch yet in the playoffs, I don't believe, have we? And
No, we haven't.
he could be an ace down the road for that team, and they've got Pablo and they've got Sonny who are pitching fantastic. This Bear pitched game 1, I believe, and went 3 innings. I don't know the exact who came in after him. It may have been Ryan, but yeah, back-to-back days, Tuesday, Wednesday in Minnesota. That is a 4:07 Eastern time first pitch for Tuesday, and then it would be a 2:07 p.m. Eastern time. So that's 1:07 Central on Wednesday for Game 4. Talk about getting screwed by the MLB. Those are going to be fun games. I mean, I really like this Minnesota team. I don't think that they quite have World Series potential, but I do think that they've got a shot to make it to the ALCS. And like you said, baseball's a streaky time. Overall, you get hot at the right time. Look at what Texas has done, 4 in a row, right?
Yeah.
So,
Right.
who's obviously you're a Braves fan. Who is the best remaining team right now? Who's playing the best right now of the remaining teams?
Texas. I mean,
Texas.
it's hard to, man, Texas. Like, here's the thing, man. Bruce Bochy just knows how to manage in the postseason, and he did something. So we didn't touch on it early on. I was going to kind of go into this, but we can circle back to it now. He did something yesterday that I saw and it was just so minute, right? He let, and I forget the lefty's name that came in and threw, I think, 4 2/3. Bruce Bochy let a middle reliever go in, and he
Bradford.
didn't follow that. He didn't exactly, yeah, and he didn't follow the analytical script. He didn't take him out after three guys. What he did notice was that this guy was dealing, okay, and he went, I think, 4 2/3,
3
and
and
only
two
gave up
thirds.
3 2/3. No runs. And the second that he started getting hit, I think it was in the 7th or 8th inning, Boch took him out. But you know what he did? That was just a gut feeling from a manager, man, and that was
Right.
so refreshing for me to see because we watched Barrios get taken out after 4 2/3, and he was absolutely dealing. And you know what that was? That was an analytical decision that was made before the game was ever played by somebody who's never managed.
Right.
Okay, and I'm sorry, man, between the Blake Snell thing, we've skewed too far into the analytical realm, and I think we need to get back to allowing the managers to manage in the postseason
Right.
who know how to do it by gut, by feel. And, I think Burns said it on one of the previous podcasts. Analytics works in 162. It doesn't work in a 7-5 3-game series, man. It just doesn't. I'm sorry. So Toronto, you should have let Barrios go. That was their only chance. Vlad getting picked off is a whole nother story. But I don't know, man. It's hard to watch as a baseball fan when a guy like Barrios is just dealing. Like Wheeler dealing tonight, dude, that was fun to watch. I'm sorry, but that's what makes playoff baseball. And him getting taken out, you just did the other team a favor, right? And somebody like Bochy knows that. That's why that guy, who was it? You said the name.
Cody Bradford.
Bradford went 3 2/3, man. I love that. And shout out to Boch and Rangers for giving him the freedom to do that, because I love that, man. That's what baseball's all about. Guys dealing, leave them in. That saves their bullpen, for not only this series but the next series. So
definitely, like Pablo dealt yesterday in Houston, going 7 innings. Like,
yes,
I would have expected him to possibly be pulled after the 6th, right? Let him go out for that 7th. Let him keep going. So to recap all of this, we're talking about the playoffs. Thank you to those of you who are chiming in on the comment section. Low the mayor of Rake City, baby. And games ain't played in the stat sheets. That's right, Joe. They're played by flesh and blood with emotion and stress and confidence and fatigue. He mentioned the Diamondbacks are a close second right now. They continue to pour it on right now. They're up 3-0 in the top of the second. Corbin Carroll just got on with a walk, and there's a foul ball. Big play by Will Smith. But runners on first and second here in the bottom of the, or top of the second. I keep thinking they're at home for some reason. Maybe because they're just controlling everybody as if they are the home team. Diamondbacks have not played at home yet, and they're going to have won 4 games in a row in the playoffs, potentially. And that's how the Rangers have been, too. This will be the first game in the playoffs that the Rangers are playing in their in their own stadium. Remember, in 2020, that's where all the playoff games were held, right, for the World Series. All 7 games were held in Texas.
Man, that's crazy.
I think that was the first year in the brand new ballpark in Arlington that they built. And Texas hasn't played a playoff game there yet, but there have been 7 World Series games played in that same building. This will be the first time that they make it into that building since it's been opened in the playoffs. So I bet you that place is going to be packed,
crazy,
insane. So it's going to be hard for Baltimore. I do think Baltimore is able to sneak this game in Game 3 out. Whether or not they're able to take both of them, that's going to be the big question. Speaking of the question, we asked the question last week to fill out a bracket. So far, I do want to update the people. This is going to be a little of a messy shot here, but there's a look at the bracket coming into this week. You can see the updated bracket on our Facebook page as well as on Instagram. Of course, Arizona went over and moved into the Dodgers series in the NLDS, and then the Braves are hosting the Phillies, or at least they hosted the Phillies in the first 2 games. Baltimore hosting Texas, Houston hosting Minnesota. The ALCS will start on the 15th, the NLCS on the 16th, so that is by the end of this week. This upcoming weekend, in fact, that'll be Sunday and then Monday. Here are who are leading our bracket challenge. Number 1, Ben Felton. You know him on Instagram at Bourbon and the Bro. He was the only one to get all 4 of the first round picks right. Second, tied for second, Kevin Kraut, Kyle Eaton, and Andy Kitzlar. Kevin Kraut, that would be Bulletproof Bourbon on Instagram. Kyle Eaton, Braves and Bourbon. And then Andy Kitzlar is... that is Sippin' Badger on Instagram. And then we have a 5th place tie with 9 other people who got 2 correct, which includes me, you, and Bernsey. But I think it's all going to be who wins the Phillies-Braves series is really going to determine who wins our bracket. Because 90% of brackets have the Atlanta Braves as the World Series champions. So... we will update those standings after every series completion. Of course, you only got 1 point for the first round. You'll get 2 points if you correctly guess the second round, and then you get 4 points for an ALCS or NLCS correct guess, and then the World Series winner, if you get that correct, that is 7 extra points. And of course, there's the tiebreaker just in case. Again, one more pop-up of the bracket challenge update. Congrats to Ben. You're the winner of the first round, but there's still a lot of baseball left to be played. Inning over out of the jam, as Justin just said. So the Diamondbacks do not score a run. They're in the top of the second as the Dodgers get out of it. But they did take out Bobby Miller. So it looks like it was a Gratterall that came in to get out of the jam. So they're already going into the bullpen. Yeah, Gratterall. This is where the day off yesterday helps the Dodgers just because they blew their wad in the bullpen on Saturday, so they got rest. But, boy, back-to-back games going to the bullpen in the first and the second.
Yeah, that's going to be tough. Not just this series, right, but the remaining series. If they somehow get out of this and they come back and win and pull off a miracle like the Braves did tonight, if the Dodgers come back and win tonight, man, that's going to be rough on their bullpen, moving forward, having to devote that many innings to those guys.
Yeah, and that was our one concern last week, wasn't it? Like, who is pitching for this team? Their bullpen has been fantastic towards the back half of the season, but their starting pitching, besides Lance Lynn, Bobby, and Clayton, we couldn't really think of who's going to be your Game 4 starter, right?
Yeah, I mean, Lance Lynn, Bobby Miller, you were relying on Kershaw to be that guy. And,
Yeah.
maybe this was almost every series, right? Whether it was the Braves, the Dodgers, even Houston, and even in the Baltimore. So the top seeds, right? For Baltimore, if Kyle Gibson wasn't Kyle Gibson, Baltimore's in trouble. If For Houston, if Justin Verlander wasn't Justin Verlander, they're in trouble. If Spencer Strider wasn't Spencer Strider, man, the Braves are really in trouble, And then if
Yeah.
Kershaw wasn't Kershaw, like, God, that's especially trouble for the Dodgers because at least the other teams kind of have a bona fide number two that you can rely on.
Right.
But for the Dodgers, like we questioned it last week.
Yeah.
Man, maybe Lance Lynn, maybe Bobby Miller. Honestly, I think Pepio might have been their best guy down the stretch.
Yep.
Like, just a lot of inexperience there.
And Kershaw was dealing with back injuries and injuries off and on throughout the season. Right before the All-Star break, he got hurt, and since then he hasn't pitched consistently. But yeah, that's going to be a huge hole, especially for a Dodgers team that doesn't have the starting pitching. If they go down 0-2, they're in big trouble, obviously, because they're one game from the brink. But still, like, you could look at the Braves. If they went down 0-2, they still would have had a shot just because of the talent on their roster. I don't think the Dodgers roster is as talented to get yourself out of a 2-0 deficit.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree. The only counter argument I might make to that is if there's a bullpen that can do it, it's the Dodgers bullpen. Evan Phillips, Bruce Gratterall, even Pepio
Caleb
and
Ferguson.
Yarbrough and out. Like, yeah, exactly. Like, they got arms for days. It's an absolute arm factory over there. Whatever they're doing with their development. So if there's a team that can come out of this, it's probably them. Whereas with the Braves, they just got to hit their way out of it.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, they got to put up 7, 8, 10 runs. If they had lost to the Phillies, I would tell you there's absolutely no way they're going to win this series unless they score 8 to 10 runs a game.
Right.
The Dodgers, that might not be true. If Orion Pepio came out and started a game, even if Lance Lynn came out and started a game and gave up 2 runs and they won 3-2, that wouldn't necessarily surprise me.
They just showed a stat. Sorry. Starting pitching in this series for the Dodgers, 2 full innings, 9 earned runs.
Oh,
Yeah. Yeah. Rough. Ouch.
wow.
Yikes.
Man, the Diamondbacks are starting to look like that. Just kind of like I mean, I know we said it like Minnesota was kind of the Cinderella team, and I still believe that. But if you would have told me the Diamondbacks were going to do this to the Brewers, to Corbin Burns, to Clayton Kershaw, to Bobby Miller, like, man, I would have called you crazy.
Yeah, the one thing I question with the Diamondbacks is their starting pitching outside of Gallen and Merrill Kelly. Brandon Pfaadt was more of a 3-inning pitcher that they took out early the other day. And then you got Ryan Nelson, Zach Davies. I don't know who you're throwing in game. Right now, I don't believe that they have an assigned starter for game 3. That's TBD as we record this right now. That would be where the Dodgers could potentially come crawling back, is that the Diamondbacks just don't have that high-end pitching. So they're not totally dead, but obviously you've got the grave dug. It's just whether or not Arizona's got the killer instinct to finish them off. What is the biggest disappointment so far? Is it Tampa? Is it the Milwaukee Brewers? Would you call it the Toronto Blue Jays? Or I can't even say Miami because I don't think they belong there in the first place.
No, I think it would be hard to say Tampa was a disappointment because of the injuries. I mean, if we want to get into semantics, their attendance was probably the biggest disappointment. But
facts.
I'll be honest. For me, the biggest disappointment is the way that MLB has sequenced the games and the game times.
Mm-hmm.
I understand that they don't want to compete with the NFL. I get that. But a 5-day gap, man, between baseball, like, that's tough. Like, the All-Star break is already bad enough, man. Don't make me wait 5, 7 days and then putting the AL back to back, and then making the NL play or have 5 days off. The NL winners,
Hmm.
the best teams in the NL, the Braves and the Dodgers, had to wait 5 days and then play a game and then wait another day. They
Yeah.
played 2 games in 7 days.
Yep.
That's just disappointing, man. I don't know, that doesn't feel right, for September baseball. So for me, I think it's more of as whole than it is any specific team. If I had to name a team, I would probably say the Dodgers because they came out flat last year. Same exact thing, right? That's happened this year, giving up a lot of runs, and just how historic that franchise has been over the last 15 years.
Yeah.
You have higher expectations. So
Yeah, definitely. I would say the Dodgers. Also, I'm going to throw in there, Tampa. You can't be disappointed because I don't think anybody expected 99 wins, but it was a 99 win team, so you kind of expecting a little more out of that. As a whole, I guess out of all the teams in the first round, I'd probably say Milwaukee because they had the best three starters. Woodruff also obviously out because of the injury, but still, you're going Burns and Peralta. You're probably expecting to win those two games.
yeah, even with those two guys and the way that Peralta pitched down the stretch, still the 1 and 2 in all the playoffs to me.
Oh,
And that
agreed.
that includes Spencer Strider and Max Fried. Max Fried had the blister, so I might not
Yeah.
be able to end, but he didn't pitch for 19 days. For me, Burns was healthy and pitched. Peralta was healthy and pitched. Man, that's still the number one and number two guys in the playoffs.
Yep.
So
Yep.
yeah, the fact that they didn't go out and at least take one of those two games, yeah, that's kind of a downfall. Kind of hate it for Brewers country because they love their baseball in Milwaukee, man.
Yeah. Biggest disappointment, I guess, outside of that would be I would have loved to see what the Marlins would have been able to throw with a completely healthy rotation, right? With Sandy and Yuri, but they just Luzardo as your number one starter, great pitcher, not an ace pitcher, I don't think. And I mean Philly just
Mhm.
kind of Philly walked through that series. Like just cakewalked through that series and
Yeah.
grab the momentum. We'll see how games three go with all of these teams. Of course, as we're recording this, the Dodgers are still in game two, but they're down 3-0 going into the top of the third. This is Barrels and Barrels, a bourbon and baseball podcast. You're watching on YouTube. We were watching live, but you can find the replay of this also on youtube.com. Find our podcast on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and X, formerly known as Twitter. Just look for Barrels and Barrels Pod. And if you're into bourbon, we are a bourbon and baseball podcast. Go check out at BNB Bourbon on YouTube. That is our secondary YouTube channel. We just dropped a new video this afternoon. I went bourbon hunting yesterday. Go check out and see anything that I did go grab. What kind of bottles were there? Go head on over. Or if you just want to see some bourbon reviews, whiskey reviews, or some funny content via YouTube Shorts, head on over again, BNB Bourbon. Okay, Wes, before we get going, predictions here. So the Braves tied 1-1. The Twins and the Astros tied 1-1. Texas up 2-0. And it for shits and giggles, let's say Arizona's up 2-0. Which team do you have the most confidence in that would be down in the series 0-2 to come back? Would it be the Dodgers? Would it be Baltimore?
Yeah, I think it has to be the Dodgers, right? Just for experience.
Been there, done that.
Yeah, Baltimore is such a good team, but they're just young and they just don't have the playoff experience that every single person on the Dodgers has. The Mookie, Freddie, Will Smith, they've all been there every year for the last 8 years.
Right.
So I would say if I had to pick, yeah, that's the low hanging fruit, the Dodgers.
Mm-hmm.
But man, Baltimore is so talented. I think they just ran into a buzzsaw with Texas, and Texas, took the dip, like we talked about in September, where they weren't playing well, came back and started lighting it up right towards the end of the last week of the season into the playoffs, and they just started rolling, man. And that offense is going, and that's just a hard offense to stop. So
It certainly is. They scored the third most runs in baseball behind the Dodgers and the Braves. Uh, that offense. And if they can get Scherzer back, he threw a bullpen on Friday, a
Yeah.
2 inning simulated game. Talk is that he could be an injury replacement for game 4, which would be on Wednesday. So that is something worth watching. We'll keep you up to date on that. If that does happen, we'll have a video out here on our YouTube channel. Will there be any sweeps? Obviously, 2 of the series are tied 1-1, but do you think that Texas
I
sweeps,
hate to
or
say this. I think Texas sweeps.
he does think Texas sweeps? I wouldn't be
I do.
surprised. I think that win in game 2 kind of takes the wind out of the sails of the Orioles, just a young team. We talked about it last week where I mentioned I think the Orioles kind of have that young ignorance kind of thing, but you get that for one game and then you get punched in the mouth, and game 2
Mhm.
is kind of like, okay, they're just young. I love what Brandon Hyde has done with that team. I'm excited to see what they do down the years ahead with this young talented core. They still don't even have their best player up yet, potentially. There's your shout out,
And
Michael.
there's our Jackson Holiday
Yep.
fan.
Yep, that is our token Jackson Holiday talk of the podcast. So let's go through it. Minnesota, Houston, who wins that series?
Minnesota. I think
Minnesota.
in 5.
Still going with Minnesota. I am going to go that way as well. I think it may be a four gamer. I think that they might just rattle off 2 in a row. They did go 4-2 this year versus Houston, I believe. So they are now heading home in a great atmosphere. Not that Houston wasn't a great atmosphere, but the Twins now get to do it again in front of their hometown crowd at Target Field in the colder weather. Right, Houston's not going to be used to this. It's going to be a chilly stretch here
Good
this
point.
week in Texas, in Minnesota. Houston's used to either playing indoors or with the roof open in the warmth. It could be a different type of scenario for Houston to be playing outside. Obviously,
Trying to hit like 96, 97 in Minnesota when it's cold is not fun.
right, right. So I'm also going Minnesota, and then we'll go over Texas. You just said they're going to sweep. I think Texas does end up winning that series. Atlanta and Philly. After tonight, you going back with the Braves?
Yeah, I think I'm gonna go with the Braves, but I'm gonna go 5. There is absolutely no way we win both games in Philly. Look, if you watched Philly in that atmosphere, God, that is the most explosive atmosphere. That's what playoff baseball is about. Like, I love that. Uh, it's just going to be real tough for the Braves to win 2 games in Philly,
Mm-hmm.
regardless of who's starting.
Yeah, and that looks like it's going to be Aaron Nola. Do you know who the Braves would be tossing game 3? Last I saw, it was TBD.
Still TBD. I think now that they've won this game, you'll probably see it be Bryce Elder.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but then again, who knows? They might go bullpen game. I don't know. I don't think that'll happen, but I think it has to be Bryce Elder.
Yeah. So it would most likely be Bryce. That would be my guess. I think he's got a short leash, though,
Yeah.
especially early. If it's a close game early, if you're still in the game, if that's another thing, though, like if you're down 5-0, you might just want to eat the innings, right? Just let them just throw.
Yeah, absolutely. If it comes out and then let's say Philly puts 5, 6 on him in the first 2 innings, man, if I'm Snit, I might say, "Look, kid, sorry, you might have to take your lumps here. We got to save the bullpen for games 4 and 5, assuming we make it to a game 5, right?" Like,
Yeah.
I mean, I hate to say that, but you're almost just kind of throwing the towel in for that game so you can try and get back to Strider, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
and you might have to use a bullpen game in game 4 to do that. The Dodgers did it what, last year or 2 years ago? Or
Uh,
they didn't have a game 4 starter. They had to go bullpen game and they ended up winning
yeah, it all blends together with the Dodgers just because they
every
continuously are in
year.
the playoffs, right? It's like, well, which year is it? Aaron Nola is the game 3 starter for the Phillies. Wasn't his best year. but a career postseason ERA 3.86, 3-2, 32.2 innings pitched, 30 strikeouts, and a 1.16 WHIP. That is about his career regular season. This year, his regular season wasn't great, 4.46. Yeah. Oh, here we go. Joe's got a comment, and he says they'll give him two times through the order if it is, and no more than that, surely, unless he is out of his mind pitching. I agree. But you need depth, and he says that is if it is close.
Do we know when Charlie Morton is eligible to come off? Did we talk about that on the last podcast?
So he was eligible to come off on Saturday, but I don't know if he's actually healthy enough to come off. That would be the thing. You gotta, in order to come off and pitch, you have to be ready to go, and I don't know if he is ready. I haven't seen the latest update on that.
I mean, you saw what happened to Max Fried tonight, right? Like where he hadn't pitched in 19 days, and there wasn't exactly a minor league rehab assignment he could go on. So
some rust.
He wasn't a little rusty, right? Like breaking ball wasn't quite there. Slider was there against the lefties, but he couldn't. He was just not quite throwing strikes like he needed to.
Yeah.
Interesting to see how that. I mean, I think that's the marquee matchup, right? At least for the divisional series, is Braves Phillies.
Yeah, Braves Phillies for sure is probably the highlight of the MLB playoffs right now, and I think the winner of that series is ultimately the NL pennant winner. Ultimately, I don't think the Dodgers are that great, and I don't think the Diamondbacks can keep this up. But who knows? Nobody thought the Phillies were going to be able to do it last year, and they ended up 2 games away from a World Series win. Did we go through? Oh, and then Dodgers and Diamondbacks prediction.
Oh God, that's a tough one, man. It's so hard to bet against the Dodgers, but I think I got to do it at this point. I mean, so Gallen is pitching tonight. You know, Merrill Kelly was presumably, let's assume that the Diamondbacks win game 2 and finish it off here. You would presume that Merrill Kelly.
He pitched game 1.
Game 1. Brennan Pfaadt pitched.
He pitched game 1 versus the Brewers, yep. So it went Pfaadt, Gallen, Kelly.
You start game 3 if you're Diamondbacks. Pfaadt?
He'll be rested because game 3 will be on Wednesday, and he pitched last week in game 1 on Tuesday. So I think you might go Pfaadt because he's probably got the best power arm. Ryan Nelson is another starter. The other one would be Zach Davies. And I don't have any confidence whatsoever in either of those two. Not that I have confidence in Brandon Pfaadt, but he's the young gun with, like I said last week with the Orioles, kind of the ignorance, right? Like,
all right, so we got Merrill Kelly pitched 2 days ago, right? Because the NL got an extra day off. So
he'd be your game 5 starter, I would assume.
Could he? Well, there's going to be a day rest in between tonight and game 3, right? So that's 1, 2, 3, 4. He could pitch game 4 on short rest.
Yeah, has he ever done it before? That's the question. And I guess the other thing would be who else you got. Do you go bullpen day?
I almost think if they win tonight, I almost think they have to go bullpen game for game 3, right? And go with an opener and then throw a Pfaadt?
Possibly, yeah.
That might be their best move, game 3, and then hope that Merrill Kelly can go back from game 4. I mean, Gallen, and it would not surprise me if they say Zach Gallen starts game 5 if it gets to that, right?
Yeah, because there will be one more day off, though that gives him potentially, 4 days of rest?
Yeah.
Or 3 days of rest. He'd be
pitching the Diamondbacks, though, man.
Yeah.
That's tough. I don't have any confidence in the Dodgers starters right now.
Me neither. I'm going to go Arizona. I'm going to go with Arizona, Philly, and then Texas and Minnesota as of now. That is not my official picks. My official picks are what we went with last week. You're mad at me. Yes, I know.
No, but it's funny. I mean, it's funny, right? Because we talked about the wild card and the day off and the days off and all of that and coming out flat and what have you. And I truly think it matters, right? But you're right. I can see you being right. And Minnesota, Texas, the Diamondbacks, and if that happens, you're telling me all 4 wild cards get into the
Yeah.
championship series.
Yeah.
Man,
Uh,
that's do you think that's good for baseball?
yes, because here's the thing. It it's good for baseball, maybe not in a playoff sense, but it tells any team in the hunt next year, you've got a shot, right? Maybe we're not going to sell because all we have to do is we just have to make it into the dance. The Phillies, the Padres last year, the 5 and the 6 seed, they made it to the NLCS. The Phillies came 2 games away from having the worst record in the National League in the playoffs to winning the World Series. They almost did it. This year, you could potentially have 4 teams who play. You could have a 3 seed, the 5 seed, and then the 6 and the 4. But that tells me that if I'm a team at the deadline, that has a shot to sneak in as a wild card. Or maybe I have a chance to be the third best division, right? The NL Central, the AL Central winner. You've got a shot. All you got to do is get in there. If you've got the pitching and if you've got the timely hitting, you've got a chance. So that's why I think it's good for baseball because it's not telling, sure, we want to see the best teams win, right? But also there's that Cinderella story. What gets the bigger play? When University of Kansas wins the NCAA bracket or when Lehigh Valley State gets to the Sweet 16, right? Or Loyola Chicago gets to the Final Four. No one gives a damn about Kansas. No one gives a damn about Texas or Kentucky at that point. Everybody's paying attention to Loyola. Everyone's paying attention to Florida Gulf Coast. Was that Splash City or whoever it was that made it all the way in, right?
Yeah.
And nobody, I couldn't tell you who made it to the rest of the Final Four when George Mason made it to the Final Four, right? Those names stand out. We do want to see, like, if you're a fan of the Braves, obviously you want to see them win. And if they're the number 1 seed, you want to see them win. But I think it's good for baseball because it does give every team in the hunt that, why can't that be us this year, in a sense? So maybe I'm going to go in and make a trade. And it keeps more teams competing rather than tanking, right? Is tanking good for baseball? Do we want
I would agree with you there.
do we want 7 or 8 Oakland A's and Kansas City Royals? No, maybe 1 or 2. They're the laughing stock of the league. But even Pittsburgh had a shot this year up until the last couple months of the season where they just kind of Colorado, sure, they sucked. The White Sox. That was a team, though, that had the talent. They just organizational failure. Cleveland, Detroit. Detroit was within a couple of games. They were second best in the division. Could
We could be
Detroit
talking about Detroit over Houston right now.
right? So, I mean, I like it personally. It's also more playoff baseball, and playoff baseball to me is the best baseball that you get. So, I know it screws a couple of teams with the rest, but I
I
don't know.
think
Houston was the number 2 seed or 1 seed last
yeah.
year?
Last year they were the 1 seed. They won
One
they
seed.
won their division.
Yeah, they won
And
their division,
then
but I don't know if they had a better record than the Yankees or not. Did the Yankees have the best record in the AL last year?
I thought Houston had a better record, but the Yankees got the publicity because of Judge's 62 chase. I think.
You're
I
probably
don't
right on
think.
that one.
Yeah, I don't think the Yankees were the best team in the AL last year. I think they won the East and they were number 2 seed.
The Yankees were the 2 seed. No, that's the postseason. Son of a gun. I just clicked on something. Yeah, the Yankees were the 2 seed last year. Houston was the 1 seed. So Houston was the best team in baseball last year, and they went on to win the World Series. So it can be done. They did it last year. It's just, I don't know. I think it's good for baseball. What are your thoughts?
I think it's good for a few things that you mentioned. The tanking aspect of it, yes. Like it gives those teams that are right there on the verge the like you saw Miami went out and traded 4 players.
Mm-hmm.
They got Jake Berger. They got who else did they get? They got
Josh Bell.
Josh Bell, and they got the
David
reliever
Robertson.
Robertson, right? And you saw them. I I did not have that on my bingo card to start the season. Okay,
No.
um, I think that is good for baseball. I think it's good for tanking. I think it's good for viewership during the regular season and the initial series.
Hmm.
I have two fears about how, and now this is only the second year we've done
Right.
this, so small sample size, right? Two fears. One is that teams like the Braves, who are so far ahead, that we've devalued the regular season enough that in September they're just going to toss the towel in, let younger guys play, and then you're going to get a very mediocre entertainment product. The other counter argument that I would say is that having let's say hypothetically, right? Because this is a very real possibility right now.
Hmm.
Let's say you have a Minnesota Arizona World Series. TV viewership will probably be far less than
Right.
a Houston Astros Atlanta Braves, right?
Right.
So that's the other part of it where I say I'm unsure about the 5-day rest thing, because I do think that does matter. And I think that's where it plays in, is that if you're talking about viewership, and if we're going to take the angle of not playing on Sunday because of the NFL, because it is about viewership, it is about that dollars. Ultimately, it comes down to this, right?
Oh,
It's
that's
all about the money.
100%. Yeah.
If that's the case, then you want the Atlanta Braves in, you want the Houston Astros, you want Philly in of all teams, right? Because everybody's going to watch Philly.
Right.
So I think that's my fear, right? I don't say, I'm not going to sit here and say that it's bad for baseball. I don't know that it's bad for baseball. I just don't know that it puts out the best entertainment product, if that makes sense.
I understand. Would you rather go back to the one game wild card?
No, God, no. Mm-mm.
Okay. So
No.
then
I
the
will.
go for it.
I Baseball's too unpredictable of a game where anybody on any given day can beat any team to say one game is it. I hated that. I'm sorry. That
Right.
that that was um I I don't I've thought about this literally for the last few days. I don't know what the solution is,
Or do we
but
go to the expansion in the playoffs of 2020 in the COVID year? They went eight games, or eight teams make it, as Joseph Campbell just said. Uh, I don't think you reseed after the wild card, because I don't think that really. That's also very hard to coordinate too,
yeah,
because
travel schedules,
you
all that.
you
Yeah.
potentially have to have two things of travel ready to go. Because
Yeah.
what if the
Yeah.
Marlins would have won instead of the Phillies, but Arizona is like, oh, well, I guess that really wouldn't have made a difference because Arizona was six. But say the Brewers and the Diamondbacks came to the last day. You don't know who you're playing until literally 8, 9, 10, 11 o'clock. You're leaving, or you could be hosting. Because what if,
Yeah.
right? Like, I don't know. I mean,
Ultimately, what I would like to see is shortening down the distance, the dead time. Man, I
yeah,
just I didn't see a reason for those 5 days off between playing. These guys play every day, man. In the regular season, guess what? On Wednesday, you're playing a game. You're traveling that night. You're playing the next day. That
right.
happens the entire season for these guys. So, like, why are one day okay? 5 days? No, sorry. Come on.
Yeah, I
Um,
guess the rule has always been and that's in any playoffs in any league, NHL, NBA, NFL. Well, obviously NFL they play 7 days apart, but uh, in the past there's been a day break in between each series when the final game has been scheduled. Now we weren't. Michael did. he expected a sweep in every series, right? So there was basically 2 days off for those teams, Thursday and
That was
Friday.
also his bold prediction, though.
Right,
So,
right. Like that's throwing shit at the fan and hoping it sticks,
yeah,
right?
and it
Um,
did.
and it did. Um, but I think you're doing a disservice to a team who fought so hard to make it to the final day, and then just be like, okay, you just make the playoffs tomorrow. You play in, and that's another thing too, is like making sure everybody gets there and tickets are sold because you don't know the final day of the season this year. Everything was set outside of the seeds, right? No one knew that Houston was going to be at home, right? You start preparing for all of this. I mean, I
You bring up a
understand what you're
good
saying.
point.
Like
You bring up a great point.
Houston didn't know that they were going to have the week off. They could have potentially been playing Tampa instead of Texas. Texas and Houston were tied on the final day of the year. And if it wasn't Seattle was in there too. So hotels, travel for fans.
I will tell you a short story. I know we're coming up here on about an hour and a half. A short story from when I was with the Lightning, and that exact occurrence happens every year during the playoffs, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because teams are fighting down to the last day. You know, you're not sure who you're going to play, when they're going to be here, and we were creating deployments based on tickets in Ticketmaster, and in Ticketmaster you had to set up 2 and 3 different games, and you could only so you would only set up games 1 and 2, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then once you knew who you were playing, you'll set up game 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever,
Right.
right? And so you had to have 3 different games set up in Ticketmaster with a ghost date, like a fake date
Mm-hmm.
in there, so that if it did happen, all you had to do was hit a button and then they went on sale, right?
Right.
And like we had to legitimately create all these hypothetical scenarios for when the Lightning did play at home to sell those tickets, because the time frame that you had to actually buy those tickets was like a day, right? And so
Right.
for season ticket holders, which is the other big piece, right? For like those Houston Astros season ticket holders, I guarantee you they had to opt in and put a
Back in early
deposit in.
September. Yep.
Exactly. They had to do that in September, saying, "Hey, by the way, if we make it, we're going to charge your credit card." Right? Like they have to do that. That's how we did it. That's the only way that you can sell that many tickets, especially to season ticket holders. They opt into that.
Yeah. So here's another thought. Joe just mentioned about, he said first, another solution, take away that extra day after the series, right? If it goes to a game 3, that's the consequence of not securing one of the top 2 seeds. And then he's saying, to be clear, I'm referencing the extra day between the wild card and the divisional. So this past Friday, the only thing I'm pushing, and this is me just playing devil's advocate, all of these series go game 3, right? And the way you have these timed out, 3, 4, 7, 9 o'clock game. Okay, now a team on the West Coast wins that game, game 3, but they're 6th seed. Say the Diamondbacks and the Dodgers were playing out west. Diamondbacks win, they're the 6th seed. The number 1 seed is the Miami Marlins. And that's who they have to go play. So you're telling me that they finished that game at midnight. Now they have to fly 5 hours across the coast and play a playoff game 1 in Miami. And that's not going to be a late game because it's an East Coast game. That's going to be a 6 o'clock start or a 5 o'clock start because it's the East Coast. That's just me playing devil's advocate, right?
Yeah.
Seattle has to play the New York Yankees. That's the longest flight that you can get outside of going to Florida, or Seattle has to play Tampa. You're kind of screwing that team who made the playoffs, who won a series. There's no good way unless you go to 8 teams in my mind. If you're going to...
The only other thing I would say is do away with a 5-game series, make it a 7-game. Like playoff
for the NLDS and the ALDS.
Yeah. Just look, NHL does this 7-game series, right? Bottom line, playoff, the wild card series, keep it at 3. all the wild cards, keep it 3, and then make the NLDS ALDS games 7, right?
I like that more. Yeah,
I think I like that more just because I think over time the 7-game series has proven to be an effective way to
agreed.
find the better team.
Agreed.
You know, and on paper the better team doesn't always win, but like in a 7-game series, I think it does. I don't know that you always get that in a 5-game series because you see things like the way that the Phillies had to structure their pitching rotation, the way the Braves have structured their pitching rotation. And we're not, and I'm not sitting here complaining about the Braves having playing 2 games in 7 days, I should say, because there's a 7-game series, right?
Right.
Like after that means the
The
2
cream
games at
rises
home.
to the top usually,
Yeah,
right? In a
so
seven
for
game
that to
series.
happen, right, Philly has to take 2 games in Atlanta and then 2 games in Philly. If that
Right.
happens, you know what? I'm tipping my cap, right?
Right.
Um, so I think the easiest solution is across the board 7-game series, do away with a 5-game series, keep the wild card at 3 games.
I could get behind that or go to 8 teams, just because
I don't
then
mind that.
every team's playing right away, right? And
Yeah.
it's just one additional round in the playoffs. I just do think that may. I think you got to go to 4 divisions then and 32 teams right away for that, because divisional winner gets a 1, 2, 3, and 4, and then the best of the rest from there would be how I would do it. But either way, we are where we're at right now, and we're in the playoffs. And there's been some good baseball. There's been some terrible baseball here in the playoffs. I don't think that's a result of the playoff setup. I just think that the Rangers destroyed the Rays because the Rays just kind of piddled down their leg, and Baltimore, maybe they just weren't ready. But they haven't played awful, right? I don't think the Orioles. I mean,
I
they've lost 2 games to start, but they've
I
scored
don't think they
11
played
runs or 10
awful. I
runs.
mean, I just think that's an offensive series, man. Like
Oh, for sure. It's a
that's just
slugfest.
2 heavyweights slugging it out, you know? They're just whoever scores more runs. I mean, I will say this. I am thoroughly impressed with what the rookies are doing in that series. You're talking about Evan Carter. You're talking about Josh Young. You're talking about Gunnar Henderson. You're talking about, I mean, Grayson Rodriguez was the other day, but look, they got some other rookies on that team that are really good, man. God, the future of baseball is bright in Baltimore and Texas.
Yep.
Baltimore is going to be there for years and years to come with what they have coming through the pipeline. So,
Yeah.
Baltimore fans, if you see this, man, like I get it. It's gonna
Stay strong.
suck. Stay strong. Trust me, your team's gonna be there for the long run.
Well, as we start to wrap that up, Rangers decided to go streaking in the playoffs through the gymnasium in the quad. Thank you to all of those who watched and have listened. JD Martinez just made it a 2-run game, 3-1 game right now, as Arizona still leads, but a opposite field home run by JD Martinez, and the Dodgers are on the board here in the bottom of the 4th. So it's not over yet. It's not over yet, but a long way to go for that Dodgers bullpen. Thank you for watching and listening as we are here on our second playoff recap going on through the rest of the playoffs. Look out for some more videos, and we may have to do an emergency podcast if Max Scherzer decides to come back or hop on. So continue to look out for these. We'll try to do as many as we can live, but if we have to record them and post them, you can find those as well. Head on over to your YouTube channel. That is at Barrels and Barrels Pod. Also, B&B Bourbon is where you can find all of our bourbon reviews and bourbon hunts and just bourbon fun videos. Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok, all at Barrels and Barrels Pod. Titter. I like me some titters.
That's what Elon Musk should have named it. Should have done away with the W and instead of X, just call it Titter.
It is X, as Wes just mentioned, at Barrels and Barrels. If you want to email us, barrelsandbarrels@gmail.com. We'll continue to push out more content there, as well as on Spotify, Apple, Amazon, Google, and iHeartRadio podcasts. Look out for some more of those bourbon reviews. We'll have another one that drops later on this week. I believe that is going to be the Still Austin Rye. Any last words, Wes? What's been your favorite part of the postseason so far?
Oh man, just the feeling of it, the passion of it. In pro sports, you don't always get the same passion you do as like college sports.
Hmm.
Dude, it gets to the playoffs. God, it is so fun to watch.
Yeah,
Just can't take your eyes off of it. It's the passion of it is where fan bases are truly created. Love watching it. Can't wait to see what happens in the next few games.
agreed, agreed. Well, for Wes, I am Brandon. This has been Barrels and Barrels, a Bourbon and Baseball podcast. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Thank you for chiming in, Joe, as well as Justin. Don't forget, you can always watch us here on YouTube. If you have any questions, send us a message. Michael Burns usually takes us home. You know the way to do it. Do you want to fill in this week?
Let's go.
And